everybody, welcome. And I am super excited to introduce you to our newest guest, Mr. Ryan Deiss. He is the owner of Digital Marketer, among many, many other things. So welcome, Ryan. Thanks for coming.
Thanks so much for having me. Good to be here.
So today we are going to be talking a little bit about how to build a marketing strategy as a local business. And ultimately, your strategy is really going to dictate everything that you do through the course of the year. And given the immense changes that we've been going through lately, I think it's probably a great time to talk about how to develop that if you've essentially had to scrap everything that you have put together. So super excited to get your thoughts on it. And first, before we dive in, if you just want to tell the audience a little bit about who you are, if they're not familiar, we would love to just learn a little bit about what brought you into the marketing space.
Sure, and I'll keep it brief because I know people don't care that much.
They do.
I started my very first business as a freshman in college in 1999. And so I've been kind of an entrepreneur my entire adult life. And, in 1999, starting a business, really that was at when the internet and the .com boom was first happening. And so if you're going to start a business, you really need to understand the internet. You need to understand online marketing, digital marketing. And so very early on, I just dove into online marketing. That was what, I knew I couldn't afford billboards or radio ads or anything like that. So for me, the internet was the only channel that even made sense. And, I again, launched a bunch of businesses, had successes, had failures, but the one consistent that has remained true across every business I've been in, and I've been in digital first businesses, I've owned brick and mortar businesses, I've owned, manufacturing companies, import, businesses. I've been in just about any type of business you can imagine being in that we've, acquired or started. The consistent variable across all of them is just the ability to leverage digital channels. So Google, Facebook, Instagram, email, all of these different channels that are available digitally to both attract, engage with, and ultimately convert more customers. So I'm an entrepreneur, but I tell people I'm a marketer. Because that really is, that is the thing at the end of the day that I spend the bulk of my time doing and thinking about.
Well, marketing is fun. So it sounds like a great job to me. And that really is true. I think if you want to start a business or grow a business, all you theoretically need to do is get more customers. And if you can market your way to more customers profitably, then there you go. The audience that we're speaking to, the local business owner, if I'm really honest, a lot of them are marketing challenged in a lot of areas. So the clients that I work with, most of them have done very, very little online before we get started. The students that I teach, it's very similar. Maybe they've dabbled in it a bit, didn't see a ton of great success. And so either they stopped or they just were not sure what to do next. So it's always been a very underutilized part of a marketing strategy for local business owners, even though, just like you said, well, what are your other options? An expensive billboard, TV, radio, and those things are consistently getting less and less effective in a lot of ways, and also kind of getting more expensive as time goes on. So really getting someone to understand how this can play into their strategy, even if they are doing those other things, I think is really, really important. So I have done some of your planning trainings myself on building a strategy for the following year. And they've been so powerful for me because I think that more than anything, just really knowing where you want to go and how you want to get there is half the battle. So when you're looking to put together a marketing strategy for any type of business, what's the first step that you're going to go to?
So the first step is to look at the time frame that you're planning for. And my recommendation, having done this a lot, is that you plan in 90-day cycles. So plan in quarterly cycles. We, at this point, have just completely thrown out the annual plan. Screw annual plans. They're just always wrong. And so what we do is we think in terms of a 3 to 5 year vision and mission, because we need to have some directionality, right? And so that's long enough to be really meaningful and to be inspiring. But if you want to get tactical and really do the planning as quickly as things change, I think that about is the best that we've been able to do is thinking about it in terms of 90-day plan. So I like to have a good distance out there that gives me that directionality. But when we're thinking about real tactical planning, tactics that I feel like we can execute in a predictable way, I think in terms of 90 days. So that's the first one. Pick what time period are you planning for? Because in any plan, right, we're trying to align our activities to achieve a particular goal. Any goal needs to be stated as from X to Y by when, right? So you need to figure out the when. When are we looking at? And so I recommend working in 90-day cycles. The next step that you need to do is pick a theme. And I use the term theme instead of goal.
Because it's more fun.
Well, it can be a bit, it gives a little bit room for subjectivity, right? So when we think about your theme, maybe that you want to launch a new product, right? Get it launched. That's not necessarily a goal that can be specifically measured, right? So I'm not saying that we shouldn't have goals and that we shouldn't have key metrics. We'll come to those in just a little bit. But I like the idea, once we picked our time frame, of saying, okay, what is the theme of this time? Because if you've got a team, that's going to be your rallying cry. Mm-hmm. That's going to be the thing that you say, okay, this, for the next 3 months, this is our core focus. This is our theme. This is the goal. And so you need to pick that and need something meaningful. So maybe yours is, maybe yours is related to growth. Our theme is we want to get, X number of customers walking through the door. We get to a point where people can walk through doors again. Or, we want, our theme is make the phone ring. Or, our theme is maybe you want to transition from a purely brick and mortar face-to-face to go online. And so maybe your theme is go online. But just imagine something that you could put on a t-shirt, but it's the kind of thing that just you can rally the whole company around. And so that's really the critical place to start.
I think that is such great advice, because sometimes a year, even though you want to theoretically plan for your year, it can be so overwhelming, and there are so many variables in terms of what's going to happen that if you get derailed once, sometimes it throws off everything else that you're going to do in that plan, when you didn't have to scrap the whole plan. Maybe you needed to adjust your 90-day theme. So definitely some of the things you just mentioned are things that I do hope the listeners will really be thinking about, because as we've seen through this situation, life is unpredictable, business is unpredictable. And if you are relying only on any type of channel, if it's just organic foot traffic, if you're in a shopping area, if it is word of mouth, those things don't always hold up. And I think that this is the perfect opportunity for local businesses to not just think about how they can market more online, but really how they can take parts and pieces of their business and really have that digital channel to pull from, so that they're able to have some more flexibility. So if you guys are going to pick a theme, I strongly suggest that one. It could be just staying afloat at this moment, but hey, that's a theme. And
exactly, survive could be a theme. Stay in the game, could be a theme. Like it's about just having this rallying cry for this particular period of time. But yeah, I think that's a really good point. You want me to keep going and go into step 3?
Absolutely. Mm-hmm.
All right, so once you pick the theme, the next step is to then think in terms of what are the key metrics that we want to move that will suggest that, numerically and a little bit more, objectively, because the theme is inherently subjective, right? So what we want to do is bring some kind of objectivity into it. And so hopefully as a business, you're tracking a number of different metrics, right? Hopefully you're tracking all sorts of things. What I want you to do, though, is pick, 3, maybe 4 key metrics. And they could also be milestones. So maybe you're saying, maybe it's not a number like a percentage or a dollar amount or a volume amount that you want to change. Maybe it's just, we need to move this particular project from, 10% done to 80% done, right? So that's more of a milestone type metric than it is a numerical metric. But picking those 3 to 4 things that you can identify, here's where we are today. So we are currently here. We want to be here. So X is where we are, Y is where we want to go, and then you want to be able to identify the gap. Now, this is harder than it may seem. Oftentimes you're like, okay, we want to increase sales. We want to get more leads, and we want to have our average customer value go from this to this. So very often companies will do this, and that's why you can't just start with the metrics you want to move. You got to start with the theme, because not all metrics are going to matter at any given time, right?
Yeah.
So once you've identified your theme, then you say, what are the 3 to 4 metrics that we know we need to move to impact that broader theme? So once you pick those 3 or 4, the most important thing to do then is to figure out, where do you stand today, and to make sure everybody in your organization knows what that number and they all agree on what it is. Let me give you an example of how we've messed this up in the past. So we picked monthly recurring revenue as a goal one time. I mean, our whole thing, we had a theme that was in and around stability. Like, we wanted to make sure that the amount of revenue that we had coming in each month on a recurring subscription basis, that just that, if we made no additional sales, just that would cover all of our costs. Okay, so that was our theme. I think back in 2018 was one of our themes for a particular quarter. The problem is the calculation of MRR is different. Like, there's different ways to calculate it. And so if you're looking in one billing system, it would have one number, and accounting was looking at it a little bit differently. And this can be as simple as like cash versus accrual accounting, right? If somebody signs up for an annual, do you normalize that over the months? Like, this is getting more detailed than you need, but the point is, I literally had people on our executive team who were like, we're crushing this goal. I had other people on the executive team who were like, we're way behind. And I didn't realize it, but I had teams that were moving in opposite directions, trying to solve different problems, because we did not agree on, this is the number, this is how we're calculating it. We also, one time, we just wanted to build our list, right? So we had a theme that was, expand, increase exposure, right? We just want to be more known. And so that's going to manifest itself in, more traffic and a bigger list. So we put out there number of active subscribers. The problem is, we never defined what an active subscriber was. Does that just simply mean they're on the list? To other folks, that meant that they had opened or clicked in the last 90 days, right? So you've got to get clear on what the metrics are, make sure everybody knows how they're defined, make sure everybody knows how they're calculated, and you need to document, here's where we are today. And make sure that when you take that snapshot, that you're not looking at an anomaly, right? That maybe you look back a month or two and ensure that it's normalized. So step 1 is figure out your time frame. I recommend 90 days. Step 2, pick your theme. Step 3 is to identify those critical metrics that you want to move the needle, where you say, okay, if we can get this number to go from X to Y by when, being the end of this quarter, then we're in really good shape. Because once you've done that, the next step is to identify what are your strategic pillars. And so again, now we're getting a bit subjective. You can see this planning process sort of shifts between subjective, and then we make the subjective objective, right? So we picked a theme, which is subjective. Then we picked, some key metrics that make it more objective. We're going to do the same and pivot back to subjective. So when we say strategic pillars, we're going to say, okay, what are 3 kind of sub themes or greater projects, let's say, that if we do these 3 things, we believe that these 3 things will move the needle on closing the gaps for those critical metrics. Does that make sense?
Oh, absolutely. Super interesting. And I think that the setting of key metrics is one thing that local business owners really need to focus on, because it's another place that they seem to struggle. I know retailers that don't even track foot traffic, which is one of their most important metrics, but understanding what the average purchase value is, what the lifetime value of your customers are. Some of those things are very standard for online businesses to understand, but I've run into very few local business owners that just have those numbers on hand before we really walk them through all of these different metrics that they just need to kind of have on hand at any given time to be able to determine where their strengths are or where their weaknesses may be. So I feel like one of the best metrics that local businesses could focus on right now is increasing their customer lifetime value, because those people already know who you are. They already have a relationship with you in some way. And especially at a time like right now, it may be a lot harder for you to get brand new customers because you can't necessarily communicate with them in person. If you are some type of physical location, you're not necessarily getting people walking through the door. And so how do you continue to pull in revenue and keep yourself afloat, or even, really grow your business during a time like this? And I feel like it's being able to sell more or sell more frequently to the people who are already buying from you. Maybe it's giving them a brand new way to buy from you, or a new product or a new offer. But there are so many things that you can do in order to make that happen. And I'm sure that's really where those 3 pillars come into play. Is it focusing on email? Is it focusing on new offer creation? Is it focusing on, your follow-up to your existing customers and making sure that that's a standardized part of your process? So lots of different things to think about, but I think that those numbers you choose really need to be thought about carefully in terms of where you are trying to go. Because, for someone that's in a great position, they're doing well, they want to keep the momentum going, something like growing your list could be a really good one. For
Right.
somebody who may not be on solid ground, so to speak, probably not necessarily what you would want to choose as your main focus. It still is probably something you should be doing to support your goals, but I would say just really look at what those numbers break down to be, and I can provide a list of formulas in the show notes that will show you those key metrics and how you can figure them out for your own business. But make sure that it is going to contribute to that end goal, and that it's not just something that you feel like is kind of fun and would be a good thing for your team to do. You want to make sure it's going to contribute to your stability and your future success.
Yeah,
So
I mean, if you're to that point, if your theme, let's say right now, let's get really specific and tactical for where people are right now. Let's say your theme is, survive or stay in the game, for Q2 of 2020. Because hey, let's face it, we're in the midst of a global pandemic, right? And so you're thinking, I just want to stay in the game. I just want to survive. If that's your theme, then one of your KPIs, one of your key metrics that you're looking at and looking to move, not just monitoring, but really looking to move, probably doesn't need to be Instagram followers.
absolutely.
Like let's be honest, like that you probably don't need to build that side. Now, if that was your theme, you might say, okay, we do need to increase, average order value or average customer value, because then we'll know that we're getting more from the people that we already have, right? Maybe it's we need to increase the number of like inbound, email requests, or we need to increase site traffic, because that means that we're able to conduct business in a place where we're, legally and from a public safety perspective, able to do that. Maybe it is email list, because maybe you say, gosh, I mean, think about all the businesses, local businesses who, and I've asked a lot of local businesses this, what do you wish you had done 90 days ago to prepare for where we are today? And what I've heard a lot is, I wish I had more of my customers' emails so I could actually talk to them right now, because they're not walking through my door. And so maybe what you're saying is, now, I mean, one of our initiatives is we do need to grow our customer, database. So how are we going to do that? But you can see how just having the goal and then saying these are the metrics that we want to move, that will now begin to inform some of these strategic pillars. And so again, the strategic pillars, think about them as mini themes, like sub themes of the main theme. And once you've identified those, then what you can start doing is making a list of all of the projects or key initiatives. So that's the next step, right? So just to recap, step 1, you pick your time frame. Hopefully it's 90 days. Step 2, get your broader theme or goal. Step 3, you pick your key performance, those key metrics. You establish your baselines. Make sure that you know the X and pick the Y by when. Step 4 is when you're going to select your strategic pillars. Those are the sub themes of the greater theme. I recommend that you have 3 of those. And then step 5, underneath the strategic pillars, that's where you're going to begin to brainstorm key initiatives and projects. And that's a specific, like, I'm going to launch a Facebook retargeting. I'm going to launch a local Facebook campaign to get people to sign up for this thing, or to try to get people to, get a $100 gift card for only $20 to come in later, just to build my email list, right? So that's when you just come up with all of your ideas, but it's not ideas in the aggregate. That's when shiny object syndrome can occur. That's
Oh,
when we
for
get
sure.
distracted, right? We've got our sub themes, we've got those strategic pillars. Now you go crazy with what are the specific projects that we want to do? And then you just start to rank those based on which ones are going to have the greatest impact the fastest. And that now, congratulations, what you have is you have a clear goal and you have the activities that you believe will help bridge the gap from where you are to your goal. That's called strategy. Okay. And if you can do all of this, following those 5 steps, then you can build out a marketing strategy that's going to be relevant, that's going to get everybody on your team aligned, and that's going to really ensure that you aren't chasing shiny objects. That we could get away with that in 60 days ago. We could chase some
Yeah.
shiny objects and follow some vanity metrics, and we can't do that right now. And so this is a good time to really build some habits and some muscle memory around building real strategy that really moves the needle. So those are kind of the 5 steps to building a marketing strategy. Happy to go in depth and all that, but yeah, those are the 5 steps we walk through every single quarter at all of our companies.
I love it. And I think that you have just taken something that can be really intimidating and very confusing for so many business owners, and you've broken it down in a way that's super easy to implement. And I think that that same type of system can work on a lot of other things they're struggling with too. Just having the end result and breaking it down into manageable steps with just really clear objectives is so helpful. But I also love that question that you were asking local business owners. What do you wish you would have done 60 days ago? And that's a really powerful thing, I think, not just to think about right now. Obviously, it's very important right now. But if you can keep that thought in your head that, given the fact that life is uncertain, what would I be wishing that I was doing right now?
Yeah.
Make this something that is constantly at the top of your mind, because being able to communicate with people when they can't come to you, that is very, very important. And sometimes you can communicate with them just through your paid advertising, but if you're really strapped for cash right now, that may not be an option for you. So if there's anybody listening that is concerned about that or wishes that they had something that could put them in that position in a little bit of a stronger way, I think that there's a great opportunity to partner with other local businesses right now, kind of collaborate and use each other's lists. If you have a similar type of customer as someone else, even just doing live videos together, anything that's going to be engaging to their audience and yours, like a webinar, those are things I've been suggesting to some of my clients that may not have an enormous amount of opportunity. Some of them might be B2B opportunities where you work with somebody who's made a great name in a certain area. For instance, so remodelers, they have a great opportunity to work with real estate agents right now because real estate is continuing to be pretty strong. People are buying new houses, so people may not be living in those houses yet when a project may need to be done. So it really eliminates some of the personal contact issues. And if you're struggling to find work right now, then reach out to a real estate agent that's doing a great job, offer to help them and get some really amazing information to their list. And what do you know? You're going to have those people engaging with you, hopefully signing up for this webinar. And you don't necessarily have to pay $1 for that in terms of marketing. You're just leveraging another local business with that same type of audience. So I think sometimes it comes down to getting a little creative if you should have been doing things that weren't necessarily done. But there's never a better time than the present to get started on those. And if you can be clear on what your goals are, then you're going to be in a much better position if we ever do run into a time of uncertainty like what we're seeing right now. So I think those are just amazing suggestions. I know I'm definitely going to get even more clear about that in my own business. In terms of what you feel like are really important goals for local businesses to be focusing on right now, let's say it's not just survival, what do you think would be really important or really impactful for them?
I think for local businesses, you said it at the outset, and you're absolutely right. It's been my experience as well when I go and speak to businesses. they just haven't mastered and locked down a digital strategy. And I think the reason is because too many local businesses believe that because they don't transact business online, because they don't transact business digitally, that form of marketing doesn't really apply to them. And so we've got to separate where the transactions occur with where the customer acquisition and where the follow-up and the engagement and the retention occurs. Spencer Spinell, who was the senior vice president of, I think, emerging platforms at Google some years ago, I saw an interview with him, and he gave a stat. And this stat has changed a bit, but not much. But he said, still today, only like 7% of all retail transactions occur online. And I believe that number is now more like 10%. But still, the vast majority of discretionary income is spent within a 5 to 10 mile radius of the home.
Absolutely.
Right? That is just still where it happens. And yet 96% of all transactions start online. And so I think just for local businesses realizing that, look, I know, especially if you've been doing this for 20, 30 years, yeah, there was a time when you had a Yellow Pages rep, you had a radio person, you bought your ads. The best form of advertising for a local business is just having a great location. And so you've been thinking, hey, I've got a great location. I've been in this area forever. People know me. The problem is that's not where people are finding businesses anymore. They don't find them by driving around anymore. They don't go to the Yellow Pages. I'm not saying that these things don't work. Radio can still be incredibly effective. Even direct mail and postcard, these things can still be incredibly effective, but it isn't where most business relationships start. Most of them still start and begin online. And so whether that's, local listings in Google, Facebook, Instagram, that's where it starts. So you've got to be there. You need to develop that from an acquisition perspective. And also follow up. I mean, it used to mean that you might run TV ads if you're, or newspaper ads if you're running a special sale or a promotion, but in general, businesses didn't follow up. You have to follow up, because if you aren't, Amazon is, right? If you aren't somebody who just launched a Shopify store, or frankly, just an upstart in your town who, if maybe you're a service provider, there's an upstart in your town who's going to be a digital first person. They're going to be somebody who they don't know a world without Google and Facebook. Those people who, I'm old, right? I got enough gray hair. I remember a world before the internet. There's a lot of people who are full grown adults coming after you. They don't. And so they're very happy to go and launch these things. So I'll just tell you, you've got to go online. And the first step to doing this, and I know you know a lot about this, Allie, but the first step to doing this is you need to document your customer journey. So you need to get crystal clear on how do customers happen? Where do they find you now? How do they begin to engage with your brand? When they come in, how are you getting them to subscribe? What's some of the first initial transactions that you're that you're going through? If you can document how a customer happens, what that journey looks like. If you can document it, then you can figure out, okay, where do we most need to optimize it? Do we need to optimize it at the discovery stage, at the awareness stage? Do we need to optimize it at the engagement stage, at the follow-up? Where do we most need help? And then you can identify the digital channels that'll be most relevant. So I'm not saying you need to go out there and start buying Facebook ads or doing SEO or, Google ads necessarily. Maybe you got enough people coming through your door. What you need to optimize for digitally is the ability to follow up. That's what we talked about before with the email list. Mm-hmm. But I would just say step one, really get clear on how does a customer happen today? Like, how does it happen? Where do you need the most help? Do you need the most help at the awareness stage, at the conversion stage, at kind of the follow-up and the ascension, increasing, getting them to come back, that kind of stuff? Where do you need help in that area? If you can identify that, then you can identify where you need to start. Well, you can probably identify your big theme for the quarter, but you can also then begin to identify the channels that'll be most helpful, especially if they're working with somebody, like you, to do that. I'm sure if somebody comes and they're like, I don't need more people. I just need the people that have bought to come back and buy again. You could probably map out a pretty good playbook for them. Whereas
Yeah.
if they just go and talk to their local SEO person, they're going to be like, we need to get you ranked on the first page of Google. And that they may not need that at all, right? So
Exactly.
got to identify where the chain is broken. Where your customers are stumbling in your journey. Document it, then you can optimize, and then you can identify the channels and the tactics.
Yeah, I think that's amazing advice. And some of what I've seen has been really trying to map out what the ideal journey would be, because sometimes they're literally doing nothing at any of these stages.
Yeah.
And maybe they never have. It's kind of been like an accidental customer journey. They might have somebody that walks through the door and they never see them again. They never follow up. They have no ascension plan. And, you really kind of have to, I wouldn't say guess, you have to examine what is a natural way for those things to happen. How are people buying in other businesses or other similar industries? And if you don't have those steps, how can you try and, somewhat match what that may look like so that you can come up with a plan for it? And you're absolutely right. Not every digital service or product is going to be right for you. So if you don't have this strategy, when you get that phone call from that marketing person on the phone telling you that this is what you need, this is what's going to grow your business, and you've never seen anything like it before, you're going to know whether or not that's a good move for you. Because I was an in-house marketing director for a long time. I know how many phone calls come through every single day, and some of them are really great options, but it may not be what you need. There's no reason to pay for something if it's not going to help you achieve that ultimate goal. So absolutely right. And I just think that this in and of itself, if you just implement this, you're going to change a lot in your business, because you're going to be so much more aware of what's happening. There's no longer just this play it by ear mentality. You won't be in meetings talking about numbers that don't matter, talking about circumstances that don't matter. You'll have a very clear focus for everything that you really want to analyze. And I also think that it kind of makes it less overwhelming a lot of times, because there are so many things you could think about in your business.
Yeah, a good strategy gives you permission to say no.
Yeah.
Right? That's what it does. Good strategy gives you permission and a mechanism for saying no, and not no never. But if you're getting that call
Not right now
from that SEO person who's like, you'd be like, you know what? You don't have to say like, no, I think this is dumb or bad or whatever, because it's not right now.
Yeah.
So many hucksters in that space that I can understand why, if you're a local business, you might be like, get away from me. But you could say like that's not a core focus of ours right now. And I will say to all the local businesses out there, work with marketing professionals who understand a holistic strategy, not just somebody who is a specialist in a particular area. Okay. If they're a specialist in a particular area, they got a hammer, they're going to see you as a nail, right? If it's somebody, what do? I build websites. If you're telling them that you don't have enough leads, they're going to be like, obviously you need a new website. You probably don't need a new website. Okay. But if you're talking to somebody who builds websites, guess what? They're going to recommend that you get a new freaking website built. So make sure that you're talking to somebody who gets the strategy, who gets, what you were just talking about. And you're dead on. A lot of these businesses, they're like, I don't know how people find us. If that's the case, then yeah, you got to guess. In science, they call it a hypothesis. But that is the process, right? Okay, let's assume that it happens this way. Let's try that and see if it works. You got to figure that out. You cannot optimize until you first document. And so make sure that the person that you're working with, the first step that they do is they get crystal clear on how customers happen in your business. And if you're not clear and they're not clear, but they want to build you a new website or start optimizing for Google or start running ads, then you got somebody who they're a hammer and they see you as a nail, and they're going to just knock you in the head until all the money falls out. Don't work with them.
Yeah, great advice. And I think that, maybe a good theme for a lot of you for the next 90 days could simply be documentation, investigation into your own business to see what you've been missing in the past. When things are good, it's easy to overlook a lot of things. But when you really have to step back and reevaluate what's happening at the moment and what's worked in the past and what may or may not work in the future, you need to have as many real facts as possible so that you can come up with something that is going to propel you forward. Because I can guarantee you that when we come out of this, which we will, things may not feel the same. It may not happen exactly the same way. People may be asking different questions. They may be taking their time with certain purchases more than they have in the past. And it's really hard to know what that's going to look like, but just be prepared by having those things as a known and not an unknown, because then you will have the knowledge to move forward being educated instead of just guessing and hoping that you're right. So it's always a good idea to base your opinions on real facts. And I think that's something that everybody could, take a note and do a little bit more of. So yeah, I love this. I think this is going to be so relevant right now, but relevant at any time. I mean, if you're not really developing a strategy for your business every year or 4 times a year, like Ryan is suggesting, then you're already a step behind. And how much farther could you be if this is something that you had been doing? But you can get there if you just start right now. So the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, as they say. So maybe this is your time to take that step. And hopefully with Ryan's advice, you'll be able to get there pretty easily. So,
well, I think we leave it there. Hopefully at this point they just go move forward. And to your point, to throw out another axiom, proverb, whatever, because I know it's frustrating to look backwards and to ask that question, what do I wish I would have done? And you can have a sense that like, what's the point? It's too late. It's not. Today it's a global pandemic. It might be a thunderstorm that knocks stuff out. Like, life happens all the time. And so this is a great, it's a great time to evaluate that. I'm not saying that it's fun, but it can be a gift. And so I would just encourage you, I guarantee there's been times in your life where they sucked in the moment. You look back and you're super thankful for them because of the learnings that came as a result. Hopefully what we talked about here today will enable this time to be that time of learning and not, just a time of torment and despair. So with that, yeah. Thanks again.
Absolutely.
For having me.
Thank you so much for being here. I think this is going to be awesome. And again, just really appreciate everything you do for the marketing community. It's been a big impact in my own life. And I know so many other people out there right now. You guys do an amazing job, and you're doing a great job of giving back to people during this difficult time. So just props again. I know you guys are going to continue to, really change the world one marketer at a time.
It's a joy and a pleasure. Thank you.
Thanks.